he's not worthy of this attention. Why is he getting more attention than me? He's not capable of running as fast as me. And it's like, yeah, you're telling on yourself. Like, it's not about how fast you're running. It's about how relatable you are and how you can bring me into your story beyond just the time that I can see on a website. Don't co-opt running as to say running thinks this. You can't use running as a bumper sticker to assign what you're saying as the thing running supports. Running doesn't support one side or the other. Running is running.
Running isn't what it used to be. And is that such a bad thing? For many people who've been running for a fair while, you will have seen this change in running. This new modern era of running is very different from what it used to be 10, 20 years ago. We had, when I started running, many of the things that we have now, but they were very different. We had social media, but it was nothing like it is now. We had fast, fancy shoes, but they were nothing like they are now. We had data tracking capabilities, but it was nothing like it is now. This modern era of running is so great in so many ways. This new boom that we're experiencing in this current half a decade is so wonderful in so many ways. But is it worth voicing our gripes with this new modern running era? Is it worth challenging some of the things that are happening? Is it worth poking holes in some stuff in the industry and in the space that doesn't quite sit right with us? I think so. Sometimes we have to have these hard conversations, highlight things that aren't necessarily aligned with what we want to see within running, and sometimes it's worth taking down certain arguments, picking them back up again, and that is what my friend Wolfie Peterson is so good at. He's a friend of the pod. We had him on episode 35, I think it was. We had a good discussion about gym bro culture and the tension between runners and those who prioritize their strength training. That was a good episode. A lot of you loved him coming on, so we've brought him on again to talk properly about something that might be quite a contentious subject. What is it about the new modern running era we like, and what is it we don't like? I want you, the listener, today to be gracious to both of us. This is a hard thing to do, to have conversations publicly, to not be afraid of trying to voice your opinion and your position on certain things. There may have been certain phrasing that I made that you might not agree with, and there may be things that Wolfie said that don't sit right with you. That's what this is for. Engage in the comments section if you're on Spotify. Write us messages. Have a good heart, because I know that Wolfie is someone who has exactly that. He is someone who wants the best for runners. He wants the best for the industry. And so today we had a conversation about the industry, the space, about running, our love for this new era, this boom, what we love about it, why we think it's so great that so many are getting into running, and what we want to question and what we want to challenge. Some of the things we don't really like so much about this new boom in running. I hope you enjoy this conversation. I hope you stick at it till the end, because I'll be there at the end to give my 2 cents as a review on the episode. But without any further ramble and ado, I bring you my friend of the pod, Wolfie Peterson. We came into this episode, last time we did some hot takes on why gym bros are so hated in the running world. And right. I respect you so much as someone who is a running culture commentator. Is that fair?
That's fair. I'm very opinionated.
I appreciate your takes. And so I thought we'd come in on this episode and kind of try and chat about this modern running era that we're in, and maybe like what we hate about the current state of affairs in running, but also what we love about it, and maybe even reminisce a little bit about what it used to be like. You know, I often reminisce because it felt so different when I started. I've been running for about 13 years now. When I started running, it wasn't cool. I actually never told anyone I was running. I was like, I think it was actually quite lame to be like running in your holidays before pre-season rugby. Like, that's a bit keen, you know. But then I just found this love for it when I left school, and it wasn't really a cool thing to be doing. And I kind of miss it, you know, when running was less cool.
I totally resonate with that. And I think that's why I try to advocate so much for the era of running that we're in, and kind of shake people to get them to wake up and realize how fortunate we are to be in this place with running right now, because you're absolutely right. Like, it was not cool. You know, I kind of resented the fact in high school I was so talented at cross country because I wanted to be better. I wanted to be that good or that celebrated for baseball and basketball achievements. Like, those were the ones that I valued because they were more socially accepted and cool, basically, right? Like, and so, yeah, I mean, the only relationship most guys had with running back then was like, it was either a form of punishment for the sport that you actually wanted to do, right? Or it was a form of like training so you could be better at the sport you wanted to do. It wasn't actually the thing. And we're not there any longer, and I love it.
I spend a stupid amount of time thinking about training. Volume, intensity, shoes, strength work, recovery. And for years, I ignored the one thing that's literally inside the shoe. Socks. I started wearing Sums because at the time my feet were just getting battered on heavy weeks, and I was fed up taping them up and using Vaseline and doing all sorts to try and look after them. But with Sums, they just work. They look after my feet. No slipping around mid-run, no bunching up at the toes, no new blisters every time the mileage goes up. I have rinsed them on long runs, wet runs, trail days, gym sessions, and they hold up. I don't save them for races. I wear Sums for all of my training that actually matters. And there's not heaps I can say about these socks. I mean, they just disappear. They just work. They hold up. They do their job. And that's probably the best recommendation I can give. If you're looking for some socks that actually look after your feet, that do what they say they're going to do, and disappear so you don't have to think about them, they're offering That's Runnable listeners a special deal. If you buy 2, then you'll get the 3rd free if you use the code RUNNABLE. So add 3 to your basket and use the code RUNNABLE to get the 3rd free. That's sumsclub.co.uk. Yeah, man, that's so true. It was always like a discipline. I actually find that quite a lot with people who have like a bad relationship with running, or think that they're never going to be a runner. It's usually because they have a bad relationship from the past. Like, maybe they were doing some sort of PE activity and then people were misbehaving, so everyone was just sent on a run around the pitch, and it's like, oh, well, who made us do this, you know, trudging, and it's like a punishment.
Exactly, right? So, yeah, I mean, I think with what's I don't even know what changed necessarily with running, but I think maybe it was just the world around it changed, and running just happened to be, you know, right place, right time. Because if you think about how running looked and felt in different decades and eras, like, you know, the Bannister era of breaking the 4-minute barrier, right? Like the 70s, 80s, when, you know, women weren't allowed to run the marathon. Everything was kind of very, I guess, Ivy League is what the term would be here, like very academic, right? Like it was kind of just like this more, you know, celebrated, and the individuals who were participating in it were more accomplished probably, and professionals. And like what you're seeing now is that like people are coming into running from all over the place, you know, socioeconomically, coming all over the place, you know, with what their hobbies are, their taste of music, you know, they're married, they're single, they have kids, right? Like the demographic is just enormous. And yeah, I don't know why it is, but like running is just kind of this hub, I think, for everybody to come together and form community. And I think the one thing everybody shares in common is that everybody's searching for purpose right now. There's a lot of shit going on in the world, a lot of distraction. AI is booming. None of that gives a person purpose. And I think running can be a place where you can like ground yourself with purpose.
Yeah, man. I come from quite a religious background, and I wrote something on my Substack at one point that, and I didn't realize my dad was subscribed to it, but he replied to the Substack. He gets an email of the Substack, didn't really realize, and he sent a reply to the email and basically made this pretty astute comparison with what I was saying. I was basically writing about my love affair with running and how I'd lost my love for running, but it was always there waiting for me and I could return to it no matter what. And he had this comparison with his faith. And for me, like, it's quite funny when I think about like my former faith and what in some ways has replaced it. And that is this endeavor of running. And I don't think it's the same. It's my running isn't a religion, but in a funny way, it's the thing that has given me purpose. And it's the thing that I believe that lack of purpose is the reason why a lot of people turn to things like religion. But it can be something different. It can be running. It can be running because it gives you purpose in your own life, because it's always there for you. It's an anchor. It's reliable. It gives you that feeling that you are worthy. But it's also an anchor in many ways because it gives you community and it allows people to feel part of something. And we've seen, I think, more than ever, I mean, you can compare it to the boom of the 70s, of course, but I think since COVID, you've seen more than ever this massive boom in popularity because of the era we live in with social media and the mass distribution of information. That boom has just been boomed even more. And people feel part of something. People feel part of a movement, I think, with running. And no matter where you're from, like you just said, no matter what, race, gender, identity, or sport you're from, running has a place for you.
Absolutely. And I think the two biggest ones that keep people coming back are characteristics of running that you might be surprised to hear. It's discipline and humility. The world we live in now, especially in the West, like tells you you're perfect the way you are. You can achieve anything, right? Like whatever you want, you can have. And it's a basically like very self-serving society that we've curated around ourselves. And I don't think we were intended to live in that manner. So it's at odds with like our internal being. And so running, if you give it a chance, definitely gives you discipline. You start living in a lifestyle in accordance to like, waking up and making sacrifices, doing the difficult things, changing your diet, right? Like so many healthy things come out of the discipline to become a better runner or just to connect better to running. And then humility, man, like humility is healthy. I love that about running. It's probably one of the things that I benefit most from it. My wife will certainly agree with that when I'm not running, like she can tell I'm a bit cranky and, sometimes get a little bit too, a little bit too full of myself or, walk around with my chin too high. So, I mean, running is great for that. Like I think man or woman needs, something that keeps them humble and in line with like what their core values are.
Yeah. I think also another thing that's important to mention is running is unique because of its accessibility.
Yeah.
Like I've spoken about this before, but in theory, all you need is a pair of running shoes and maybe a couple of other bits, sports bra, maybe some nice shorts if you need them, but like pretty much a pair of shoes is all you need, and then you're off out the door. And that's so valuable to people because more than any other sport, you can just implement it into your life on a daily basis. And actually it's beneficial to have it in your life frequently. And so this frequency and discipline becomes more accessible than any other sport. Like running is very unique in that way because it slots in so easily. Like it doesn't have to be an hour-long run. It can just be 15 minutes here and there. Like I was speaking to a friend of mine who's he's going through a very stressful time with his kids, and he was sort of saying, my running's dropped off a bit, and discussing the beauty of a 15-minute run and
right.
A 15-minute escape from the house. It's very accessible in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, just take it away from you for any sort of long period of time, or 2 weeks even, right? Like any runner will tell you, boy, a 15-minute run would be incredible. And sometimes we take it for granted because, if you're in the ultra running community or even training for like, marathoning, anything long distance, like you become desensitized to the fact that you're like, I'm just going to go out for a quick 2-hour run, right? But it's just like, you have to remember that like, there's people that are dying and wish they had the opportunity to get out for a 15-minute, jaunt around the neighborhood. And so, yeah, I mean, that's maybe one of the things that the moment that we're in, the period that we're in right now, is everything so sensationalized that we're kind of losing the accomplishment of the small. And I don't want to ever leave behind anybody. I've got a endearing term, a moniker on my podcast I call the 95. And it just refers to anybody, that's making time and sacrifice in their life to fit running in. And whether that's 10 minutes or 10 hours, I think we all need to make sure we celebrate everybody and bring them along.
Yeah. So would you say that's maybe the first gripe you have with the modern running era?
Absolutely.
We see like these accomplishments. I mean, I was thinking about this the other day, man. There is such talent in the space now. It's actually scary what I'm seeing people do. I know of people, UK-based, you can call them creators, but they're straight up athletes, and they only found running in COVID. And they're running 2:30, 2:20 marathons, or like 1:10 half marathons. And you're just like, that is next level. That is next level performances. And the number of people that are doing running now is so much bigger that the pool of talent is just so much greater. But I would never want people to feel like just because there's more talent and then therefore more likelihood that you'll have people doing amazing things like running a 1:09 half marathon or whatever it is, that doesn't take away from your accomplishments as a runner. Even if, it's not as great and fast as that, I think just because there are more impressive things happening out there, it doesn't take away from your running. And it can feel like that. It can feel like, you've got so much social media content, you've got so much to compare to. And, the reality is the most impressive stuff tends to do pretty well in the running space on social media. And so you're looking at this stuff and increasingly your accomplishments are shrinking because there's just people doing greater and greater things, which I think is quite difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. I was this weekend. I live out in the Phoenix, Arizona area, and we had a major ultra marathon race, the Black Canyons Ultra. So all the elite performers, men and women, are going to be there vying for a golden ticket to Western States, and so it's incredible because you have this whole media apparatus and all these crews and spectators that kind of follow aid station to aid station, the front end of the fields, and you get to the finish line, and there's just so much energy. They do the podium, top tens come in, and then there's this kind of lull, and you realize like the commentary goes away. It's just a static cam now, and somebody else is coming in, 5 minutes later with a time that's just 5 minutes behind these elites, kind of, we're just, maybe like 2 hours behind these elites, right?
Sure.
And it's kind of just this like juxtaposition of like accomplishment, but it's not. And that's what struck me is like, we have this term in ultra, the golden hour, and we celebrate and we ring the bell just as hard for the guys and girls that come in the last hour as we do the elites. The golden hour starts the minute the pros disappear. And once the top 10 banner's gone away, the podium's gone away, the golden hour starts. Everybody there has just done something that's incredibly impressive and should be celebrated, and I hope that, they all do have somebody, at least one person in their life who is as equally astonished of what they just did as how we are of the professional that won the race, because it is. I mean, we can't ever just desensitize or normalize running 62 miles or 26.2 miles on the roads. These are accomplishments that very few humans approach, and a lot of people out there need to feel like that love and celebration for what they do.
Absolutely. I think of the elites or people who are performing at a like sub-elite level in ultras. For me anyway, the most inspiring stuff is the ultra marathon running. And I see it as inspiring. That's how I see it. It's untouchable. I'm not getting there. I'm no Hans Troyer, but I see it and I'm like, that is truly inspiring that a human can be running for 6 years or whatever it is and be competing at that sort of level, and it's inspiration. But I think also one of the most inspiring things about running, and one of the greatest opportunities now that people have, and one of the things I love about the modern era, is that every individual, no matter where they are in the field, can be inspiring. I think I think that's one of the coolest things about running, and is about the social media world that we live in, is actually a lot of the time the most inspiring people are the average Joes who have a great transformational story or have a story to tell of some kind that they can get out there and inspire others, and they show what they're capable of. And it might not be elite level stuff, but it's still wildly inspiring. And actually, I think that when we look at the full field of people, you can get inspired by people doing a crazy stuff, but a lot of people don't feel that inspiration because it's so untouchable. It's like, I'm never going to run a 11-hour mountainous, or like an 8-hour mountainous 100K, right? It's not going to happen. But I can be absolutely inspired by it in some ways, but many people are not going to be, because it's so untouchable. Whereas I can be inspired by someone who's a similar level to me, but has gone on to do things that maybe are achievable for me, but I haven't had that spark, And so I think that one of the things I love about it, and one of the things that I try and lean in on, is this opportunity we have to post about running on social media, and think to ourselves, who actually could I inspire? And no matter what level of runner you are, you can be the inspiration to your neighbor or to your brother or friend.
Yeah, totally. I think that's a good segue into my next complaint with running. So this, I don't know, I want to make sure I say this in a way that it lands right with the audience, and I might be new to a lot of your audience, so forgive me. Again, I'm loose with the tongue. We kind of, say things that are explosive, and then we try to put them back together maybe in a way that is a bit more rational. But I'm kind of tired of the era that we're in, where elites are boring. Like, I'm not inspired by elites in the slightest bit. And I think it's because there's this like fragile mentality of elites where they pour so much into their craft and trade that like they can only accept celebration for the time and accomplishment that they received, or that they just completed. And anything less than that is kind of an insult. And let me explain that. Like, elites aren't great storytellers. Like, I believe they're interesting, but for whatever reason, I don't know if it's insecurity or they're just so compartmentalized, they don't share interesting stories anymore. Like, they only want to get on podcasts and talk about their training and how they're able to accomplish such elite godly results. But yet you have somebody like, let's say, Max Jolliffe, right, who has incredibly immense talent and does things that are wildly impressive, to the rest of us amateurs as well. But he's not talent-wise there with the tip of the spear in the elites, but he resonates because he tells stories. He lets people in. And I think he gets almost gets judged, right, by these elites or gatekeepers, and say, he's not worthy of this attention. Why is he getting more attention than me? He's not capable of running as fast as me. And it's like, yeah, you're telling on yourself. Like, it's not about how fast you're running. It's about how relatable you are and how you can bring me into your story beyond just the time that I can see on a website. So I don't know, you take it from there.
Yeah, man, that's so interesting. I think I've had these thoughts before. I think there are a lot of really impressive runners out there who are frustrated by the attention and brand deals that non-elite runners are getting. And actually, this is a pretty hot topic, I think, amongst elite runners. It's like, they're like, I don't have time to be doing social media. I don't have time to be like just telling this story. Or whatever. I just want to do my craft. I just want to be good at my thing. And why is that not good enough? That should be good enough. And in some capacity, to some extent, I get that. I understand that if you're doing something and you're being the best you possibly can be at that thing, of course, you would think that you should deserve the most attention. But that's not how the world works. And that's certainly not how the world works anymore. People are so obsessed with stories. We need stories, and actually brands sell with stories. That is how it works. And so brands look for storytellers. They don't actually look for athletes as much anymore. The athlete is valuable if they have a story. If the sport is a story enough, then they're worthy. A footballer might do really well with brand deals because football is the story. People love the story of football. And I'm talking about soccer, just to clarify, Brian.
I'm following.
But you know, if the sport is popular enough, the sport itself, then they don't need as much of a story. Add a story to it, it's more valuable, of course. But the thing I think that a lot of runners don't realize, professional runners, elite runners don't realize, is that running isn't interesting enough. Running is boring. And so if you're gonna make money in running, which by the way is a boring sport, just to remind you, you better be telling stories. You better be captivating an audience and bringing them into your sport, because that is your task. If you want to make money from running, you need to bring the audience in, and you do that with storytelling.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love it. I mean, just to continue this idea, concept a little bit more, like with the football soccer comparison, like the audience size of, you know, major sports like football, soccer, right, basketball, right, like they're immense, right? And
Unbelievable.
Right. But it's a converse effect of running, is that like the amount of people that spectate soccer matches and football matches, that's more equivalent to the amount of runners who participate in running, right? And then the people who actually participate in playing in like an adult soccer league is equivalent to the amount of people that watch running to be a fan of it but don't participate in it. Like, you know, are you squaring those
100%.
two?
Yeah.
Like in running, like I don't know anybody that watches running as a sporting event but doesn't actually run, right?
Yeah.
Like that's very few. And for those people, you're going to impress them with just your time. You don't need to tell a story. Yeah. And the biggest example for this is Eliud Kipchoge. Okay, he was on people's radar. People knew how talented of a runner he was if you were a fan of running. But if you weren't a fan of running, you had no clue who he was. The minute Nike comes in and does this breaking two, and then momentum builds, and he starts speaking in tones with slogans like "No human is limited" and saying things that transcend running, start talking about how he's still living in the Kenyan camps and sweeping the floors with his training partners. He's endearing. Oh my God, this guy's the greatest marathoner ever, and he's sleeping on dirt floors. He's eating a humble diet, right? And he's living a lifestyle that we can embody even if we aren't as talented as him. Like, it's so simple that it makes me resent the fact that people, A, don't do it, and B, are like kind of like crapping on the people who are doing it. So
is your gripe that some elite runners need to catch up and need to recognize the world that they live in?
My biggest gripe is the ones who are actually going a step further and criticizing those who are doing it on the basis of the fact that they don't have the talent to deserve to tell stories that are worthy of a large audience. And then my second gripe is, yes, I'm a fan of the sport, so I do want to see, like, look, we talked about Hans Troyer. We've already said his name. The reason is because the guy, he's got the kid documentary that's almost got 2 million views on YouTube, and it wasn't about really running. You know, it was kind of just showing this young kid out in the woods of Georgia. It was a fascinating documentary. You know, I always show my wife certain things as like a sounding board, like of how it lands, and she loved it, right? She's not a runner. She doesn't even, I mean, she's a fan of me as a runner, but like she doesn't care what, you know, my accomplishments are in running. Like, she's not a runner. So when she can watch a documentary and enjoy it, then I know that it's accomplishing what, you know, I'm trying to advocate for.
The brands, if you're making money in the sport, brands really is the way to go. And I think one way to think of it, I think, is that, especially on the topic of like whether it's a spectator sport or a participant sport, it's certainly a participating sport predominantly. But if you want attention, you need to make it more of a spectator sport. And the way you do that is you need the audience to want that certain person to win or want that certain person to perform well. most people who know of Hans Troyer know of him not because of his performances. They know of him because of his storytelling. And so when he does well and he wins Black Canyons, there is just massive celebration for him. And that's because we know him, and that's because we want him to win. And the same goes for non-elites. The same goes for someone like Andy Glaze. Andy Glaze has a massive following because of his social media, but he's not an elite runner. But I literally saw viral videos about Andy Glaze when he completed Moab 240 in his third attempt. When he finished it, I saw people making videos about celebrating that he won, he did well, that he finished it. That says so much about what matters to people. What matters to people is not the elites and their performances as much. What matters to people is connecting with the stories, connecting with the people. And, there's no better person than connecting than Andy Glaze. Like, he's just the king, right? But to think that I saw viral videos with tens of thousands of likes about Andy Glaze. It's not from Andy Glaze. So that is just huge passion and support for an individual based on his stories, not on his performances. I love that as a gripe. We can mark that as the first one.
Excellent.
Do I come in
please.
with another one?
Yeah, I'm a guest here, so please, yes.
We think a lot about our kit as runners, especially ultra runners. We think about the jackets we're wearing, the shoes we're wearing, maybe the race pack we've got, and all the mandatory kit that you might be required to take on your ultras. One piece of kit that we neglect often, and I've certainly neglected for many years, is socks. Socks are the unsung hero of every runner's kit bag. Looking after your feet is so important. And that's why I use Sums. Sums are socks that stay in place. They don't crumple and they don't fold. And if you wash them a few times, they're not going to lose their elasticity. They stay put. They do their job. They're built properly, sustainably. And they look good too. And, as we all know, it's really important to look good when you're running. So if I were you, I would go to sumsclub.co.uk and I'd check out what they've got. There's some beautifully designed socks there. Quality socks. This is my recommendation. Go to sumsclub.co.uk. They're offering That's Runnable listeners a special deal. If you buy 2, then you'll get the third free if you use the code Runnable. So add 3 to your basket and use the code Runnable to get the third free. That's sumsclub.co.uk.
No, it's a back and forth. So I'm, there's a lot that I don't like about the modern era. When I was sort of preparing for this, I was thinking about my journey with running, and I was then therefore reminiscing about what it felt like to be a runner a decade ago. And it felt, what it felt like was running itself was the most important thing. Running, for me, like the feeling of running was the most important thing to me. And I think what I don't like the most about this modern era is, and this is a sort of big point really, and we can maybe go into little strands of it, but is the noise. We'll call it the noise of running. There's so much noise out there. And I think that's probably the biggest gripe I have with the space at the moment, is that there's just all these distractions. And what it does is it distracts people from the actual experience of running. We are talking today because we both have a similar interest. That interest, yes, we are interested in, the culture of running. We're interested in the space, the industry, and that sort of stuff. But we fundamentally, as individuals, love running itself, like the actual feeling of running itself. And I think a lot of the space distracts people from that. And what that leads to, the byproduct of that, downstream from this distraction, because of the noise, it leads to all these negative consequences. People start overspending on gear they don't need. People start over comparing themselves to others. People start chasing goals that were never theirs in the first place. People start overtraining and getting injured, and they lose what is so valuable about running in the first place. And that is the running itself. It's the feeling of running. So if I were to say that I have one overall gripe with this new modern era of running, it is the noise. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I like it. I think if I can take a crack at maybe giving it a title or a banner as well, I would say that, I don't like when runners become consumers. Like, you don't consume running, you participate in running, right? And you're right, like, it's this slippery slope of you get into it, you're having so much fun, you're connecting, it's a brand new hobby for yourself, but don't bring in old habits that maybe, you're escaping from other hobbies and things that you are investing your time and money into. Running doesn't have to be that way. And it is kind of a toxic path to go down if you start behaving like a consumer. You start creating an identity that's more wrapped around the kit that you've curated, maybe than what's healthy. I've been there before, a huge fan, obviously, of the self-expression movement. And yeah, there's been times where I find that maybe I'm, doing things that aren't authentic to myself, and doing them just because I see that's where the tide is going, in a certain direction. And so you got to pull back. So completely agree. Like, I just guard and caution anybody around turning running into a consumer hobby than an actual athletic pursuit like it really is.
Yeah. I think, this is probably true for almost any hobby at the end of the day. And perhaps we could blame social media for it. And sometimes when I complain about social media, I see this great irony. I make content. So much of my time is committed to making content about running and contributing to the noise itself. But if you can't beat them, join them. And so I'm doing my best to calibrate that noise. But at the same time, like, I think it is social media actually that I have like a big problem with. And, we could flip it. So the listeners will be potentially frustrated at the moment because we're giving a bad name to what can be very inspiring and a good space if you curate it well. But I do think that it's very difficult to control what's coming in. And so we are, as much as we don't want to believe it, we are passive consumers of whatever our interests are. We're in this kind of interest media world. It's not really social media anymore. It's your feed is predicated on what you're telling the algorithms you're interested in. And if you're interested in running, as much as you can kind of try and control that, it's going to be coming at you. And what comes at you is not really up to you necessarily. And so we are now kind of victims in some ways. And it's really difficult to control that, I think. And so I think this is like the big problem I have with this like modern era. It's this massive boom, and that's great, but it's also like a completely uncontrollable boom where the wrong messages can very easily find their way to people's phones and therefore eyes and minds. And I worry about that because I see a lot of the like damaging byproduct of it. I'll give you an example, just like from people in my coaching hub. People join my coaching hub and they are, they'll talk to me about what their goals are and stuff. And they say, I've signed up to a marathon. I've got a marathon in 6 weeks, which firstly is like insane that you've just come to me 6 weeks before a marathon. But then they'll say that, they've been training sort of, they've been doing like 3 runs a week and now they've got a marathon in 6 weeks time. And I'm just like, there is no soft way to say this, but you should not be training. You should not be going for that marathon in 6 weeks time. That's an unreasonable goal. You're in total, including your strength training within my program, you're maxing out at 4.5 hours of training in your running and your strength training. And you have a marathon in 6 weeks time. Like anyone who knows about training will know that that is a recipe for disaster. It's a recipe for injuries, for potentially having a bad experience on the day, for maybe even not being able to run again for weeks after, whatever, you could sensationalize it as much as you want, but I don't think that that's wise. I think the reason for that is social media. I think the reason for that is this over production of this over distribution of massive goals and amazing achievements, and putting the marathon on a pedestal when people aren't ready for it, or even ultras, for example. Ultras have become this normal thing that like people are just doing on their weekend, running a 50k on the weekend, like as if it's nothing. And then people who aren't ready for it think that they should do that too, or they're not good enough if they can't. And I think that we lack this ability now to, sometimes anyway, to be reasonable with our goals and to understand what's truly required. And what is truly required often is not weeks, is not months, but years of consistent training. And I think it's the boring stuff that doesn't do well. And that's why I struggle with social media, because a lot of the truth that you need to hear doesn't get to you because it's not interesting. It's boring and it's not what you want to hear. And the stuff that reaches you is the stuff that is probably going to end up being bad for you in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. It's this microwave culture that we've lived in for decades of immediate gratification.
Yeah.
You see the reel, and I mean, it makes sense. Like, I get it. Like, we've all been inspired off of like a YouTube video or a reel to want to hop on, ultra sign up or whatever the equivalent is for you, and pin a bib, right? And then we'll figure it out as we go, right? And so, yeah, you're right. There is this kind of negative consequence of this, or at least just a lack of balance, to make sure that people out there, as they're new, have a full picture of what they're getting into. Because you're right, yeah, the last thing I would want to see is somebody get in over their head, have an injury or just have a miserable time, feel like this sport just is a waste of effort and energy, and never give it a proper chance. Yeah, no, that's a great one. But there's a lot of noise, not just around social media, but just, around everything. And it seems like there's a current that kind of washes over running as a whole. And then there's kind of the narrative of like Europe. There's the narrative of the United States. And then there's even regional stuff. So that was like another complaint that I had, that I'll kind of bundle it up within yourself, as just like there's this competitive tug of war going on for who owns running, who's driving the running culture, who's responsible for where it's going to go. And so, yeah, I mean, there's a ton of takes there, but I sense it, I feel it, and it goes all the way down to even like just within the United States, like regionally basis, like, the western side of the United States versus the east coast of the side, and then state by state region have rivalries. And so, yeah, sometimes it gets a little bit, too petty, I think, to be good.
Yeah.
I like healthy rivalries, but sometimes I think it's more of a negative consequence than a positive.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I don't know if we really have that all that much across Europe, but I certainly see a bit of like the trail versus road stuff. But to be honest with you, I see that as like just a bit of friendly banter most of the time. Like bodyboarders and surfers or whatever other,
Skiers and snowboarders, right?
Skiers and snowboarders. Yeah, it's just a bit of banter. Which one's your favorite? But I don't think there's certainly not like any territory-based identity stuff coming in. What is that really like in the States? So you say there's like a West Coast and East Coast. Is there like an idea of like something about the beast of the East, or like the trails are harder in the East, or what's the crack there?
Yeah, so obviously, like each region, it's going to have its own terrain, and obviously on the East Coast, I think it's a much rockier, rooty, like slippery, slick rock. You've got humidity. I don't think you can navigate the terrain as quickly and as, I'll call it, beautifully, or as elegant as you can on the West Coast, right? They call it the California carpet of Western states. Those trails are, buttery and
buttery.
I think it's a much more, I don't know. I mean, some people, I guess, like running on the East Coast, but I think, the consensus is like, it's a much more fun way to experience trail running You can navigate across the terrain much faster and more efficient. You have to earn, I think, every step you take, on some of these gnarly East Coast trails. And for some, they love that. So, yeah, I mean, I guess it's just something that's out there that you can sense and feel. You've got Asia really popping off right now with running, huge growth in China and Korea. And so, yeah, you're going to start to see different brands kind of pour in and prioritize different areas for obviously economic and profitable reasons. But it's going to be interesting to see if the US will continue to be maybe the leader in, running and how it presents and sounds and feels, or if these other cultures and nations are going to come in and kind of, maybe take over a bit more.
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting, I know you've been a champion of the kind of running as self-expression idea, and I love that. I think that you can both lose that in all of this industry chat. You can lose this idea of your personal relationship with it, but it's also exemplified in social media. People really showing themselves to express themselves. I had Herm on the podcast the other week. He's a real champion for self-expression and being himself, and expressing himself through running. And I think you get both, don't you? You get this, you get competitiveness and identity through brands and regional identities and stuff. But then you also get individuals kind of saying no to all of that and just saying, I just run, or I just do it this way, and I am actually not part of any of that. And I think that can get a lot of attention in a great way. You, yes, you, I'm talking to you, could be more clear. You could be more confident in your training. You could feel stronger. You know those times where you really just feel like your training is going really well and it's all well-rounded, and you have your strength training in order and you know what you're doing in the gym, and you have your running in order and you feel like you're feeling healthy and strong and capable? Have you ever felt like that? What you need is something to lean on, is the Coaching Hub. If you were to join on the first Monday of next month, you'd be part of a group all doing the same thing, looking to build a sustainable running practice, something that actually lasts a lifetime, something that is healthy and actually helps you to understand why you're training the way you're training, and gives you skills and habits and practices that last a lifetime. If you want to work with me, if you want to join the Coaching Hub in the next intake, you will also have a whole hub of resources in there, a library of resources from me to teach you about all this stuff. The first Monday of every month is when it starts. You can join now. You can sign up and claim your spot. There are limited spots each month. Coming into spring, we are going to be filling up, so take action. Okay, that's it for now. Run the runnable. Keep showing up for yourself. And I'll see you next time.
So I'll bring another one to you, the table here for you. And first I want to celebrate it as a virtue. We're talking a lot about self-expression, and I love running because it really does have a blank canvas. It's just incredible to think about, because you think about running, it goes back, got to the 1800s. There was running, and earlier than that, right? To the Olympic Games and such. And so you would think that running would have such a strong legacy that it would already have, rituals. It would already have things that are so ingrained that it's a given that this is running. But it's a true blank canvas, like football, soccer, right? There's certain brands and certain, ways that you have to present yourself to kind of be accepted, as a footballer, right? And so running doesn't have that, and I love it. Mm-hmm. And it's why self-expression can really thrive in this era, because you can project your music tastes onto running. You can project anything you want from outside of your running life that's important to you into running, and how you, navigate within the space. And I love that. What I don't love so much is when people hold running hostage with their political views, with their socioeconomic views, with their science views. I don't like when running becomes this child in between two parents who are divorcing, and they're both just like pulling on this kid for control. And it's like, running's suffering right now. Like, let's figure this shit out. Like, we clearly know the world's a sloppy place, but like, let's not use running as like that kid that we're fighting over for custody to project over why socially, politically, or whatever the case is, our morals or virtues are right or better.
That's an interesting one because I think that we
sorry, you know, I come in heavy and deep here.
That's good. We're suffering from everything we praised about it at the beginning of the episode. This accessibility, the fact that it threads through all cultures and people and views, and it's a constant through, like, it's available to almost everyone is running. And that's what's so beautiful about it, is that anyone can get out there and do it. And so in one vein, we can consider it something that unites us all. But then if used as a vessel for our own views and ideologies, then is there risk of ruining running with this message? I mean, yeah, that's not something I've ever thought about. I think a lot of people online debate this idea of like keeping things separate. I personally don't talk about politics on my social media. It's always been a rule. I've always made sure to keep it separate. And then there's a whole band of people who would say that it's your responsibility with the platform you have to talk about real problems and real issues. And I don't think I agree. I personally don't think that it's up to everyone else to, tell me how I use my platform. But I also don't think that I should use my platform for that discussion. I think that, of course, there's massive problems happening. There's always massive problems happening. And I think that I would like to keep those problems separate from this thing that unites us all. And that is that this thing I want you to get into and to engage with is running. And I don't want to put you off from that. But it's an interesting one because I can sometimes feel very emotional about things that are happening. And all I want to do is show my rage or opinions about the thing that's taking place on my platform. And I want to reach people and share a message. But then I have to stop myself with this rule that I've set for myself, that is, I don't engage in that way. And so it's a difficult one because I think I for the most part agree. I think that we do run the risk of like letting our opinions and our ideologies dilute something that can actually remain pure. If that makes sense.
Yeah. I think if I could specify it just a bit more, I'm not trying to shut down conversation. I clearly love conversation. I even love a great, intentioned debate. Like I don't shy away from that. And so, but what I'm saying is that like let the conversation remain amongst individuals, right? Like don't co-opt running as to say running thinks this. You can't use running as a bumper sticker to assign what you're saying as the thing running supports. Running doesn't support one side or the other. Running is running. And I think that's what's the issue at hand here, is that whether it be brands, collective of individuals, whatever it is, they try to then take running and say, this is what running stands for. This is what running supports.
Sure.
Because we're runners, we have to do X, Y, and Z. Because we're trail runners, we have to go this direction. And whatever direction that is. Not saying either one is to blame more than the other, but I'm just saying let the conversation remain at an individual level. I think that's where the community thrives best, and running can be left alone.
I think that's beautifully clarified.
Okay.
I think, I think I'm so with you on that. I don't think I have anything more to add on that.
Perfect.
I think let's talk about some of the things that we'll finish off sort of celebrating some of the things that we love, because we started off celebrating running as a whole and where we're at. I think there are a lot of risks with this new era of running that we have. But I think there's also some beautiful things happening, and they can be small and they can be powerful. One of the things that comes to mind is a little bit more of a potentially a comical one, but to segue from our last discussion, I love that weightlifters, I don't want to call them bodybuilders, but weightlifters, people who are like keen on the gym, now care about a sub 25K. I think it's a beautiful thing that specialized people who used to hate cardio and used to think like cardio is going to ruin my gains, are now embracing it to the extent that it's now cool, and you have a term for it, hybrid. Now we have people are flexing not on social media that they can just bench 225 pounds or 100 kilograms on, you know, on a Tuesday, but they can also the next day or literally the same day run a sub 20-minute 5K. You know, I think that the all-round athlete is now a thing thanks to running's boom and the modern running era being a big thing, and I think that's worth celebrating.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I would flex to show that I'm clearly not in the hybrid camp, but I am a big advocate for that as having an athletic background. Like if you really take a step back, all runners who don't go to the gym, if you truly take a step back, again, use some of the humility that running gives you, you admire that. You know deep down that that is a much more healthy example of a man or a woman when you're, you know, building strength up, you know, not just through the act of running. So couldn't agree more. It's a healthy pursuit. Obviously, there's its own pitfalls and holes you can fall into with that, but just face value, leaving it there. Like, yeah, cheers to the hybrid athlete.
Yeah. I think that also, man, I think the main thing I love about this modern era we're in, I could complain about like comparison and load of misinformation out there and like all this sort of stuff that is difficult about the space. I think ultimately what I'm seeing is more people are running. And if I had if I had one ambition in life, it is to get more people out the door and enjoying movement and running and finding their own way to do it and their own relationship with it. And I think overall, that's actually what's happening. I can't say that my feed is a representation of everyone else's, but I'm seeing at the moment a lot of celebration of being bad at running and just saying, you know what, this is the experience of running itself is sick, and it's one I want to celebrate, and I don't care for all of these times necessarily. But you can also marry the two things. You can also go for goals and find out what you're capable of, but also recognize the value of just going out and being a runner and, you know, the mental benefits of running and all that sort of stuff. And because running is so accessible, because people recognize that they can get into it, I think more people are getting into it, more people are getting into exercise because of it, and then therefore more people are talking about mental health and the benefits of it for their own mental health and bigger, more important reasons why they run. And so overall, I think like I'm a big fan of what's happening right now in this boom era because more people are out doing it. Absolutely.
I think for me, one of the things I'm really big on right now is just how running is being accepted as an athletic sport. And I think a lot of that, not just from like the elites, but like all skill sets. And I think that is a great consequence of the hybrid athlete movement and just people coming into running from other athletic disciplines where they consider, like they identify as an athlete and they have so much success in other types of sporting events that then they get into running and they realize, whoa, this takes athleticism.
Yeah.
And I think for the longest time, running was just kind of looked at this thing that like, you know, Peggy down the street, you know, can go do, or, you know, you can, like, jogging was the worst term. I think it set running back decades. Like it was a big boom, but then everybody just kind of thought of it as like, oh, you just go out for a leisurely jog. And it's like, no, running is demonic, right? Like running, you know, you're going to have some headspace challenges. Your lungs are going to be on fire. Your legs are going to burn. Like, yeah, this is a thing that like is athleticism. And so I'm glad that it's finally getting the respect that it's deserved.
Yeah, man. I think that it's because One thing I love is that people who are not necessarily or weren't runners go out and try it and realize how hard it is to just run. For like, people will go out and be like, I was running for 5 minutes and I just don't know how you're doing it anymore. And so downstream from that is this embrace overall of hard things, a celebration of hard things. And I think that is such a valuable thing. Like, if I'm really honest, I think it's really a celebration of hard things that I like. And it doesn't have to necessarily even be the fact it's running. But I think because running is so hard, and because so many people are getting into it and realizing that, they're realizing not only the value of running, but the value of hard things.
Oh,
and
totally.
I think that's it, man. I think that's the place to end it on.
Totally. Very good. This was another great chat, man. I so appreciate coming on, you sharing your platform with me, and hopefully the listeners had some fun with this one.
What a conversation. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Brian. An absolute belter. He's always coming in with good takes. I think one of the things I respect about Wolfie is his willingness to converse, his willingness to come in with an idea and to have conversation about it, to have dialogue, to come in and maybe say something in a certain way and then understand how someone's receiving it and re-clarify certain things. And I think that that is one of the most important skills that people should be able to have, is this willingness and fearlessness to go into conversation and maybe be wrong, and sometimes help someone to figure out a new perspective, and sometimes find a new perspective themselves. And that's what this is all about. This is about having conversations, about voicing what we think, how we feel, not holding things back, and being understanding of what each other's intentions are. I think I want to also highlight that this is really hard to do. We're not talking about anything deep and all that serious. We're talking about running and the running world. But to us, that's important. Running is something that we've both fallen in love with and we hold really dear and precious. And I think that is one of the things that surely resonates with you, is that you find running precious to you and you want to protect it. And so we have to have these conversations. We have to talk about what we do and don't like about running, what divides us, what unites us. And some of that is lighthearted. Some of it is about, Strava data or all that sort of stuff. But some of it is actually quite impactful, is the idea of comparison and how we size up to others, and whether it's healthy to be chasing goals that aren't necessarily our own, and all these sorts of things, and consumerism in the space, and identity, and all this stuff is, I think, really important to have conversations about. And I think it's important also to have conversations about how the modern era has changed running and how this boom in running impacts people's experience of the sport. So I hope you enjoyed it. I know that Wolfie enjoyed it, I enjoyed it, and we may well have Wolfie back on the podcast. He is such a pleasure to have conversations with, and he's such a good guy. I know that his intentions are all in the right place. If there's anything that you disagreed with from Wolfie or from myself, please tell us. We want you to engage. If you're on Spotify listening to this, go down to the comment section, leave a comment. Keep it spicy. We don't mind. And go and check out Wolfie's podcast as well. Wolfie's World on Spotify and other platforms. Wolfie's World of Running. Go and check it out. It'll be in the show notes below. He has great guests on, and he continues to speak his mind and challenge himself and others on what they think, how they think. And I think he is a force for good in the running space. So go and check out Wolfie's World of Running and have a listen. There are many of you, thousands of you every episode, who don't rate the podcast. And I would love you to. If you've come this far, if you are this deep into this episode and you've enjoyed it and you think it's of value, rate the podcast. Go onto your phone, open up the app that you're listening to this podcast on, and leave it a rating. It would be a great thing for us if you were to do so. It really helps the podcast out. A lot of energy, effort, and investment goes into making each episode every week. So please do show your support in any way you want to and can. Share it with your friends, rate the podcast, comment, follow it or subscribe. And yes, that's it. That's my only ask.